How's it going, everyone? I know this is a different type of video and I haven't done this like ever, so this is pretty new to me. But anyways, today I'm going to be showing you guys, or just explaining to you guys, what I do for my workout split. So I'm going to be going through everything, all of the days, and I'm also going to be showing you guys like the exercises that I end up doing, and pretty much I'm going to just be voicing over everything. Right now, just so you guys know, I'm in my room, so I'm just using my PC for once. Anyways, let's hop on the monitor and let's show you guys what we're doing. So quickly, I'm going to explain this. So I have two different cycles. Well, that's what I like to call it. So the first cycle that we go through is going to be high volume. So this is when you're going to focus on higher rep ranges for like your compound lifts, which is going to be your flat bench, barbell squat, and your deadlift. Then the second cycle that we end up doing is going to be high intensity, which I'm going to get into that later on. Just a quick heads up, this video might end up being a little bit boring, but if you stay tuned, you'll be able to see my workout, and it could be pretty useful for beginners. And this is exactly what I ended up using for the 3 years that I've been lifting, coming up on 4 now, but it's pretty much what changed me from looking like a skinny twig into something that or like just someone that has a decent amount of muscle. Yeah, so let's get straight into it. So obviously we start off first day with chest. We end up doing dips, which is going to be 3 sets of 15 reps. Then we head on over to the incline bench, and this can end up being dumbbell or barbell. Recently what I've been doing is I've just been like, with high volume I'll do incline dumbbell, and then with high intensity I'll end up doing barbell bench. But we do the incline bench for 3 sets by 12 reps, and then after that we head on over to flat bench, and this is where the rep ranges are very, very important, because this is what's going to matter between those cycles. The first 3 sets, we're going to be doing 8 reps. We want to do a good, decent weight, something that we can end up, like, we know that we're going to be able to do for 8 reps, but we're focused on the amount of reps that we can get in. By that 3rd set, you want to make sure that you can at least do 8. And that means that it's like a good intensity that you can get it up to 8. 4th set, we're going to do 8 to 5. So this is like, you're increasing the weights every set, and you just want to make sure that you can get somewhere between 5 to 8, so this could be like 6 or 7. So you just want to make sure that you choose a good weight. It's completely fine if you go somewhere in between there. You just want to make sure that you have that good intensity. And then for the 5th set, we end up doing 5 reps. So this is also very, very important, because you need to make sure that you can only get 5 reps. You want to keep that intensity very good. But once we're done with that, we're going to end up going over to cable lateral raises, and this is 3 by 15. Just make sure that you're doing like a decent to a high intensity, and you also want to focus on the reps here, because you want to aim for 15 reps, but if you're increasing the weights like on your second or maybe on your last set, you can only do like 12, that's fine. So, and the same thing is going to go for pec fly, so that's why there's the red highlighting. So this is going to be 3 by 15 or by 12. It really depends on what you're increasing the weights to. And then lastly, we're going to do high to lows. So you're going to go over to your cable machine, and you're going to use handles or whatever you prefer. And then you're going to end up doing 3 by 15 again. Second day is going to be back day. And then this is when we're going to end up doing pull-ups at the beginning. This is going to be 3 by 15. And after that, we're going to go over to seated reverse fly, 3 by 15, and we're going to move over to lat pullovers, which is also 3 by 15, and we're going to go over to shoulder shrugs, which is 3 by 15 or 12. So this could be different just because you're increasing the weights as well. You want to make sure you have like a good, like a decent intensity here, because you want to make sure that those traps have a reason to grow, and that goes for every muscle group. Afterwards, we are going to do cable reverse fly, and that's 3 by 15. Lastly, we're going to do T-bar row, which is 3 by 15 or 12. So as well with this one, you want to end up also increasing the weight, but that could be on your second to last set. So I would just recommend to just start off your first set with like a decent weight, something that you can definitely do for 15. And then by the second set, make sure that you choose a weight that you can at least only do 15 reps. And then for your last set, that's where you can do 15 by 12. Really quickly, for those of you guys that are like starting out or anything, you guys can end up screenshotting this, if you just want to try out my workout, you can just end up screenshotting this, and then all the highlighted that is red is something that you can do, like on the last set, you can do 15 to 12 reps, just depending on how much you're increasing. Moving on, we're gonna go over to the third day, which is gonna be legs. So I do have 2 leg days in this, but there is a reason why. So if we look at this first leg day, we're gonna see that we start off with seated calf raises, and that is 3 by 15. You wanna also have like a decent to high intensity for this, just because calves are pretty stubborn to grow. And then this is gonna be supersetted with sissy squats, which is 3 by 15. And then usually I don't do any weights for it. I just do 3 by 15. And then if you wanna also increase the reps for that just to make it a little bit more difficult, or if you can find a way to where you can load weight to make it more difficult, then that would also be very, very useful. And then we're gonna move on to our main compound lift, which is gonna be the barbell squat. So again, with this one, first 3 sets, you're gonna be starting off with 8 reps. Like I said before, make sure that your first one is something that you can do for 8 reps. And then for the third one, you're gonna wanna make sure that you can only do 8 reps. And then we're gonna move on to the 4th set, which is 8 to 5 reps. Just make sure that you can increase the weight and then get somewhere between 5 to 8 reps. And then we're gonna move on to the last set, which is the 5th set. So this is where you need to make sure that, this is where you're gonna be increasing the weight. Make sure that you're actually having a really good intensity for this one, because you wanna make sure that you're ending off with only 5 reps. And lastly, we're gonna move on to leg extensions, and this is something that you can end up loading a very good amount of weight for. So I usually say to keep this from a decent to high intensity, but this is 3 by 15, and on that last set, you can end up aiming for 15 to 12 reps. Moving on to the 4th day is arms. So we're gonna be starting off with shoulder press. I usually like to start off with shoulder press just to get my shoulders, flowing, and I feel like it just really gets me warmed up. So this is a 3 by 15 exercise. Again, you can increase the intensity for this. And this could be done with either a machine or a dumbbell. I've done both. Both of them I enjoy, so really it's just preference, but just at least make sure that that bench is inclined. Next up, we're gonna be moving on to preacher curls. And again, this is also a decent to high intensity exercise. So this is a 3 by 15 exercise, but by that last set, you can also end up aiming for 15 to 12 reps just so that you can increase the weight. And I personally recommend doing single arm, but if you're just beginning, just make sure that you're doing both arms, because then this can also prevent, building a muscle imbalance. I prefer single arm. This is usually just by preference, but just make sure that by that last set, you have a really good intensity. Tricep pushdowns. These could be used with a straight bar, or these could be used with a W bar or with a V bar. So it's just really what you prefer. I usually either do the V bar or the W bar, just because I don't like using the straight bar. It really puts a lot of strain or just a lot of pain on my wrist. I personally just prefer the V bar or the W bar. I also end up feeling it better with those. So make sure that you guys end up trying those out, seeing which one you like the best and which one you can feel it in the best. So this is also a 3 by 15 exercise, but by the last set, make sure that you're only getting up to 12 to 15 reps. And then we're gonna move on to the dumbbell lateral raise. You want to make sure that your arms aren't fully straight, but you wanna have a slight bend. I see a lot of people that do, they have their arms fully bent and they're pretty much their arm is at a 90-degree angle. I really don't recommend doing that. It takes all the focus away from your lateral delt. And I'm not a science lifter, but it's just something that I've heard a lot throughout the years. So just make sure that you guys are just having proper form. But this is a 3 by 15 exercise. This one, I feel it's really important that you do 15 reps, but just make sure that you have decent intensity and that you're reaching those 15 reps. Next up, we're gonna move on to hammer curls. This is a 3 by 12 exercise, so you can end up loading more weight when you do this. Just make sure that you have a good intensity and make sure that your form is good and proper. There is crossbody hammer curls, and there is also just regular hammer curls where you're just going straight. I personally prefer the straight hammer curls rather than crossbody, just because going straight will target the brachioradioalis and the bicep brachii, Moving on from that, I go over to katana pulls, and I do 3x15 for this. I like to keep a good, decent, high intensity weight, I guess. Just make sure that you're able to actually pick up the weight. You don't want to end up injuring your rotator cuff or your elbow or anything. So just make sure that you choose a weight, try it out. So that will move us on over to the last day, which is going to end up being legs. So we're going to start off with hip adductions. That is 3x15. I usually use this to warm up my hips for deadlifts. So make sure that you're doing a good weight. I don't recommend doing extremely high weights, like a very, very high intensity, just because that can end up really injuring your hips. It's happened to me before, but you know, everybody's bodies work differently. So moving on, we're going to do standing calf raises. And sometimes with this one, you can either do standing calf raises before deadlifts or after deadlifts. Standing calf raises is 3x15. This is also going to target a different part of your calf. I would not be able to explain to you which part, but I'm sure there's a bunch of information online, and there's a bunch of people that can actually truly explain this in a science-based way. And then we're going to head over to deadlifts. So the first set to the third set is going to be 8 reps. Remember to keep that good intensity throughout those 3 sets. And that first set, just make sure that you can actually get it through. For your third set, just have a high intensity for that and can only get 8 reps. By the fourth set, it's going to be 8 to 5 reps. So just make sure that you're choosing a good weight. And then lastly, the 5th set, this is going to be 5 reps. So just make sure that you're choosing a good weight to end off on. But also make sure that you're not ego lifting to where you start hurting your lower back or anything. And then another thing with deadlifts is that it doesn't really matter what the stance is for this one. So if you wanted to do like conventional, froggy, or sumo, you know, it's all up to you. It's all preference. I like to switch up between froggy and conventional, but just make sure that you know you have good form and that you're not going to end up like herniating a disc or anything. But lastly, for this day and the end of the split is going to be hamstring curl. So this is 3x15, and then this is going to be a decent to high intensity exercise. First 2 sets you want to aim for 15, and then on that last one you can go 15 to 12 and then just increase the weights and have a high intensity at the end. This is the end of the first cycle. I also want to explain another thing, which is how I end up using these like splits. I will work out 6 days of the week, and I will just rest on Sundays. I run these cycles because they're not real cycles, but it's just what I like to call them. But I run these cycles for about 5 splits. So I'll go through high volume. I'll go through that split once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and then 5 times. And then once it hits that 5th split, I'm going to end up switching it to high intensity. But yeah, just make sure that you're tracking it. And another example to just kind of like help you guys understand this. So for example, if I started chest on Monday, I would end on legs on Friday, and then I would start chest Saturday again, and then I would just rest on Sunday. So I know that this is a lot of volume and just a lot of like training throughout the week. Like I said, people's bodies are different. This is exactly just what worked for me, and it worked really well. I also just ate a lot throughout the years, so just make sure that when you're eating a good amount of carbs, you're getting in your protein if you're going to try this. Diet is going to be very, very important when it comes to workouts like this. Moving on, we're going to be going over the higher intensity. So the thing about high intensity is that every exercise stays the exact same. It's just the one thing that changes is the main compound lift of the workout. So that's going to be the chest day, and then that's going to be the legs and the second day of legs. So flat bench, we're going to be doing first to the third set, we're going to be doing 5 reps. Again, just make sure that your first set you can get 5 reps well. And by the third set, make sure that you can only get 5 reps. And usually for this, I'll try and have a spotter. I would definitely recommend it, just because if you can't get the rep in, you know, somebody's able to like catch it and, you know, save you from dying. Moving on to the fourth set, this is where we're gonna do 5 to 3 reps. So you're gonna choose good high intensity weight, and you're gonna make sure that you can get either 5 reps or 3 reps. You can either be in between there, or you can just get 3 reps. But if you can get 5, really aim for it. And for the fifth set, we're gonna end up doing 3 reps. So this is where you have a really high intensity, and this is where you're gonna be pushing a lot. So this is where I would really recommend a spotter, just because you don't want to end up failing, but also don't ego lift. Know your limits and make sure that you're just being safe and using safety bars. Moving on to the first day of legs, barbell squat is going to be very similar to the same layout as bench. So first set to the third set is going to be 5 reps. Remember to just make sure that your first set is something that you can do for 5 reps, and on that third set you're going to be doing only 5. Moving on to the fourth set, this is where you're going to do 5 to 3 reps. So you want to choose a good weight where you can only do 3 to 5 reps. If you can't get 5, it's completely okay, but just as long as you're safe and you're using safety bars. And then on that last set, it's going to be 3 reps. So just make sure that you choose a good weight, and you can also get a spotter for this. I would also really recommend it. I just recently had to teach Avery how to spot. I just think it's really important to just get a spotter to just make sure that your chest isn't going forward, or that like your back isn't rounding out or anything. And then second day of legs, and this is going to be the end of the high intensity split. Again, you're going to be running this cycle. You're going to be running this cycle for 5 splits. So this is going to be deadlifts. The first to third set, you're going to end up doing 5 reps. Fourth set, 5 to 3 reps. Remember, you're increasing weights every set. And then lastly, that's the 3 reps. This is where you're going to be topping out at. So just make sure your form is good. If you have to wear a belt, wear it, please. I would really recommend it. And then if you also have to use some straps, that's completely okay. Again, so 2 different cycles. First cycle is going to be the high volume. You're going to be running that for 5 splits. Right after that, you're going to end up doing the second cycle, which is going to be the high intensity, and you're going to run that for 5 splits. Once you finish the first cycle, you're going to move on to the second cycle, and then you're going to move back to the first cycle, if that makes sense. But I am going to be bulking here pretty soon, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. But anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and again, thank you guys so much for all the support that you guys have been giving me. I just recently hit 900, around there. I just really want to appreciate you guys for all of that support. Just make sure that you guys check out all of my other accounts or all of my other socials, which are going to be down in the description below. But again, thank you guys so much for everything. If you enjoyed watching this video, or if you enjoy this type of content, definitely make sure that you like, subscribe, and also leave a comment down below if you want to see more videos exactly like this. Definitely let me know down in the comments below, or if you guys have any other questions that I might be able to answer, definitely just leave them somewhere on my shorts or Insta or my TikTok. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Just make sure you guys stay safe, stay positive, and I'll see you guys next time.